So there is demand for a new party, is there? You know, in some ways I can scarcely believe I'm doing this, because I did actually think, when 498 MPs voted for Article 50, which said quite explicitly that we would leave the European Union on the 29th of March with or without a withdrawal agreement, I thought, well, we've won the referendum. 85% of us have voted for parties in the general election who say they will honour the result of the referendum, and then 498 of them have said it's going to happen. I did actually, rather stupidly, for a moment, believe that we'd won. But it became clear pretty early on, really, with the so-called negotiation, that our Remainer Parliament, our Remainer Cabinet, and indeed our Remainer Prime Minister were going to do their utmost to delay, dilute, and in many cases to actually stop and overturn Brexit. And I think what we've seen over the course of the last few weeks is the betrayal, willful betrayal, of the greatest democratic exercise in the history of this nation. And when I began to realise, back in November, December, that extension was almost certain to come, that there would be more European elections, I thought, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to set up a party. I'm going to call it the Brexit Party. But given that it's the most Googled word in the English language, I wonder whether the Electoral Commission will allow me to use the name. Well, they have, and you are here today at the birth, at the launch of a new force in British politics. Welcome to the Brexit Party. I haven't spent 25 years of my life fighting to raise the issue of why we should be an independent, normal, self-governing country that makes its own laws, has its own courts, controls its own borders. I haven't spent 25 years of my life doing that to simply roll over and to allow a career political class to betray that result without me fighting back. Well, the fight back begins here in Coventry today. And I think what's happened is our two-party system simply can't cope with Brexit. I think our two-party system has been exposed, frankly, as being unfit for purpose. I think we have a parliament that is now completely out of touch with our country. I think politics is broken. And I want to say this. This party is not here just to fight the European elections on the 23rd of May this year. This party is not here to ask people simply to express their anger by going to the ballot box and voting for us on that day. No, no. The 23rd of May is the first step of the Brexit Party. Our task and our mission is to change politics for good, to change all aspects of politics in this country. I did say that if I ever had to come back into the political fray, next time, it'd be no more Mr. Nice Guy. And I mean it. I mean it. I mean it. Yes, I'm angry about what's happened. I know lots of people out there are angry. But this is not, as I say, a negative emotion. This is a positive emotion. We're going to use these elections to change things. I said many years ago that I wanted to cause an earthquake in British politics. Well, now, what I'm fighting for, and with your support, what we will attempt to achieve is a democratic revolution in British politics, because that is what we need. Now, even before we've launched the party, one or two very interesting and exciting things have begun to happen. Just over 10 days ago, The website went live, and we said to people, if you want to sign up as registered supporters, if you want to donate money to the party, we're open for business. And I think it's pretty remarkable that in the first 10 days of operation, we've managed to raise over £750,000 from small donations from members of the public. I've never seen anything like that in my 25 years of campaigning. And when I was asked this morning on the Today programme, on the BBC Today programme, I was asked, what big donors do we have? I said, well, of course I'd welcome big donors, but wouldn't it be even more exciting if it was hundreds of thousands of small donors that funded the rebirth of democracy in this country? Because that is what it's about. It's about democracy. Our democratic decision is being willfully overturned, and this is coming in the country that has what was once called the mother of parliaments. And I can tell you that all over the world, our friends, and I do know one or two quite highly placed politicians in some other English-speaking countries of the world, and all over the world, people look on with incredulity because they still think that we're a great country. And the funny thing is that we, the people, still think that we're a great country, but our leaders are happy to continue down the path of managed decline. I genuinely believe right now, this nation, we are lions led by donkeys. And not only are our leaders weak, not only have they willfully betrayed this result, but they're also pretty much incompetent. They're not actually very good at what they do. They're not very good at anything. Too many of them have been down the path of going straight from Oxford to become a researcher, to become a member of Parliament in their late 20s. They've got no experience of the real world. They are classic career politicians because to them, getting re-elected matters more than anything else. They're not in politics out of passion. They're not in politics out of a cause. And in many ways, you can understand why career politicians would embrace the European project. It's a wonderful safety net for anybody that fails in national politics. But they do look incompetent. And what I've been astonished by with the Brexit Party is the quality of people who've now decided enough's enough. The quality of people who are putting their names forward to be candidates for this European election, and thousands more already who've applied to stand for us in local elections, in general elections, in by-elections, and whatever else it may be. And I also want to emphasise that amongst this remarkable talent we've got from men and women who will be standing on our list, and I do believe that the list that we will put before the British public on May the 23rd will be the most impressive list of candidates any political party has ever put before the British public in history. I genuinely believe that, and I mean that. We have many people on these lists who do deals every day, who do deals every week. So it's time the political class who've shown themselves incapable of doing a good deal were pushed aside and replaced by those who know how the real world works. Of course, there'll be questions about broader issues of policy, and we'll come to that in time. But for now, we are focused on the 23rd of May. For now, we are focused on this question of democracy, this question of trust, and indeed, this question of competence. How are we going to do? Well, I don't know. But I have been to the bookmakers this morning. And I remember in the run-up to the referendum, when it was 4-1 against Leave winning, and I went into a bookmaker's in London and put down a bet, how everybody thought it was so terribly funny. Well, I did manage to collect my winnings. And I have this morning put £1,000 on the Brexit party to top the poll in the European election at the odds of 3-1. Who's to say? I don't know. All I can say is this first step in our journey to change politics for the good, this first beginning of this fight back, all I can say is we are going to provide the British people with a decent, respectable, competent political vehicle that they can believe in and they can vote for. And after that, well, it's not up to us, is it? It's then up to the public in this country. I think we're going to set something exciting, a spark. It's going to happen over the course of the next few weeks. I do believe that we can win these European elections and that we can again start to put the fear of God into our members of Parliament in Westminster. They deserve nothing less than that after the way they've treated us over this betrayal. I really do believe that Britain needs the Brexit party, and we'll do whatever we can over the course of the next few weeks to provide that respectable vehicle for those who want us. And let's just remind ourselves what this referendum was about. It wasn't about some economic prognosis from the CBI that we might be worse off, or a view of many of the entrepreneurs that support us that we're going to be a lot better off. It wasn't about that. The referendum was a very simple choice. Did we wish to stay part of a political union, or did we wish to become an independent, self-governing nation? And we, Leavers in this country, none of them have changed their minds. In fact, in many ways, the Leave vote has hardened in this country. And there are equally many people who voted Remain, who believe that democracy is so fundamental to this country, to who we are as a people, that unless the will of the people is carried out, something would have changed in our nation forever. So I think, with a bit of luck and a following wind, trying our hardest, I think we can turn this around. I know this is a battle that we shouldn't be having to fight, but we are having to fight it, and we are going to win it. Thank you. Now let me introduce you to a selection, just a handful of the 70 candidates that will be standing for us in England, Scotland and Wales on May the 23rd. And can I please welcome to the stage Annunziata Rees-Mogg.
Hello, as Nigel has said, my name is Annunziata Rees-Mogg, and I am here today in sadness. I am here in sadness that our democracy has been so betrayed that I feel the need to be here. For the last 8 years, I've been a full-time mother. I didn't think I would ever be back on the political scene. I wanted to avoid the negative comments that people throw all over the place, and the violence that can come from putting your name above the parapet and standing for what you believe in. I didn't want my children to have to suffer that, but my country needs to be recognised in the democratic way that it has called for. Our politicians need to listen to what the people have said. I joined the Conservative Party in 1984. This is not a decision I have made lightly, to leave a party for which I have fought at every election since 1987, from Maggie Thatcher through to Theresa May. I know which one I'd rather have representing us now. Within the Conservative Party, there have been good times, but there have been quite bleak times where I wondered what our leaders were doing and I had serious questions, but I stuck by them through thick and thin. But at the point at which our Prime Minister will not listen not only to her membership, but will not listen to the people of her country, 17.4 million of them, many of whom had never voted before, but believed in bringing back control, I can't sit by and let her do it. It is our fight, and we must fight to win. There have been scare stories, left, right, and centre. Oddly, we seem to have less to fear from WTO than the EU. It is them that should be trying to avoid it. When it comes to tariffs, the majority of the world operates on WTO, and it is the world that is growing as Europe and the European Union economies stagnate. We should be looking further afield. We should not have fear, we should have belief. We know we are a great nation, and for that we should be proud. We should stand up, we should fight for our futures, for our children's futures, but most importantly, we should trust the people. In 2003, I founded a campaign called Trust the People because it's what I so fundamentally believe in. We've got to rescue our democracy. We have got to show that the people of this country have a say in how we are run, that the politicians are not our masters, they are to do our bidding. We must fight back not only of control from the European Union, but fight back for control of our own democracy. The stakes are that high. This is a fundamental moment for all of us, for our futures, and to shape how things go forward. I cannot put up with the despondency on the streets. I cannot bear to see the anger amongst the people this country's elected members have ignored. We must fight their fight. We must win the fight. And we must leave for a greater future and better politics. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And I was also asked this morning on the Today programme, whose votes were we targeting? Were we targeting Tory votes? Were we targeting Labour votes? And the truth of it is, we're targeting the millions of people out there who voted Conservative and who voted Leave. We're targeting millions of people who in previous times voted UKIP and voted Leave. And we're not going to forget for 1 minute the 5 million people out there who voted to leave and who also voted Labour. Very, very important we get that message out there. Very important indeed. Let me introduce my next candidate to the stage, Ben Habib.
Well, thank you, Malcolm, for welcoming us to your industrial facilities in the heartlands of the manufacturing sector in Great Britain. I am delighted to be here. My name is Ben Habib. I'm founder and chief executive of a company called First Property Group. I've been very politically aware all my life. I've been a Tory voter and more recently a Tory donor. I've never been politically active. But the reason I have stood up today and joined the Brexit Party is essentially because of this document. I just want to remind you all about this document. It was a document that David Cameron circulated at a cost of £9.4 million in the run-up to the referendum. 23 pages long, 22 pages dedicated to all the fear that we must take on board if we were to leave the European Union. but two very critical points were made in this document. The first was, and I'll just read it to you, the government will implement what you decide. And secondly, that this is the vote of a generation. The government didn't proceed to deliver what we decided. The government proceeded, well, in David Cameron's case, he resigned virtually immediately. Theresa May made a couple of good speeches at the outset, which was very encouraging for people like me. And then she proceeded to slip slide to the awful position in which the United Kingdom now finds itself. I do deals for a living. That's precisely what I do. And the last thing I will ever do is take no deal off the table. It's absolutely bonkers. If you take no deal off the table, what you're signalling to your counterparty is that you will sign, and it's a logical consequence, you will sign any deal that they put in front of you. In other words, Parliament has condemned this country to unconditional surrender. I have a 1-minute warning, so I've got to be brief. But I want to talk very briefly about the economy. The whole Remain argument centres on the economy. Every day in the run-up to the referendum, we heard about what a disaster it would be if we voted to leave. Well, that disaster didn't happen. Every day now, we hear about what a disaster it would be if we were to leave without a no deal. I heard the Chancellor on Sophie Ridge the other day saying that it would be catastrophic if we left without a deal. He's our flipping Chancellor. He shouldn't allow the country to get to a position where it could be catastrophically bad for us. But let me tell you, there is nothing to be feared from no deal. People don't trade with the United Kingdom because we're in the European Union. They trade with the United Kingdom because they want to buy our goods. They want to sell us their goods. Trade deals are not a prerequisite for trade. They're just a nice to have. We will be absolutely fine without a deal with the European Union. I've run my business successfully through the boom period as well as the credit crunch. Economies change. Markets change. Legislation changes. Social behaviour changes. Buying pattern changes, internet and the technological environment in which we operate change. Businesses are subject to change all the time. If we think the imposition of a small number of tariffs is going to knock Great Britain off its legs, then we've lost the plot. And I'm out of time. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Well, just to back up Ben's point, as Malcolm Penny showed me around the factory this morning, I saw some of the spray painting work that was going on, and I said, well, where are those goods destined for? The United States of America, with whom we trade under WTO rules. It's not that difficult, really, is it? I want to introduce to you our next candidate, who is June Mummery.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, Coventry. My name is June Mummery, business owner and founding member of Reef, Renaissance of the East Anglian Fisheries. I represent fishermen from King's Lynn all the way down to the Thames estuary. I have been fighting continuously for the past 2.5 years to secure a brighter future for our coastal communities post-Brexit, which have been left behind by governments past and present. I want to ensure this changes. Brexit is a golden opportunity to rejuvenate our fishing industry, realise our vast potential to become as successful as Norway, Faroe and Iceland. We have a vision and a sustainable plan to make our coastal towns prosper once again. We must take back full control of our precious ocean and the fish within it. There are billions of pounds worth of fish to be caught and processed in our country, creating jobs and wealth. One job at sea produces 8 jobs on land. The UK fishing industry could be worth a staggering 1.6 billion catch value and 6.3 billion net to plate value. I have lobbied hard towards the banning of electric pulse fishing exercised by the Dutch fishing fleet in community waters. This barbaric, unethical method of fishing kills the biodiversity that makes up the very ecology of our sea. Our campaign has been a success. Pulse fishing is to be banned in the sea. Our campaign has been absolutely wonderful. Our campaign has been a very big success. Pulse fishing is banned in our European waters. This is first-hand evidence of what passionate UK citizens can achieve when we work together. The UK has some of the richest fishing grounds in the world. We are tired of watching the Dutch, French and other EU countries plunder our natural resource. We wear the crown and we are throwing the diamonds, emeralds and rubies away. We must scrap the common fishery policy, take back full control of our waters and take full control of our country and our destiny to make our country great again.
Jean, thank you. And our next candidate is Alka Segal Cuthbert.
Hello, I'm Alka Segal Cuthbert and I'm a teacher, but I've tried to be not too teachery. But I do think it's worth having a little bit of a historical perspective, which will explain why I think we need to leave the EU and why I'm standing. I think the question of democracy is central. It's taken centuries for societies to go from being ruled by myths and taboos to monarchs who rule by divine right, to social democratic forms of governance, which are based on the majority vote and where the governments get their legitimacy from their citizens through democratic mandates. I think it's the idea of one citizen's vote being equivalent to any others, irrespective of religion, employment status, cultural preferences, or what have you. That fundamental principle has been the basis of equality and the basis of a level of social solidarity that made Britain a place that my dad wanted to come to in the early 60s from India. He was a teacher and he stood as a local Labour candidate, probably the first non-white in that particular London suburb at the time. And he came not for money and not for access to services, but he came because of that democratic principle, a principle that respected democracy and autonomy as a general rule for everybody, not just if you were rich or if you were academically qualified, or if you had the right beliefs. And I think since the referendum and all the developments subsequent, we've seen that even as an ideal, that principle of democracy is so weak, it doesn't really exist anymore, because over the past quarter of a century, our political class, that's from all parties, have spent their time and efforts, along with their friends in Europe, to create an institutional structure of political regulation that, in the words of one academic who I am happy to quote, has depoliticised the economy and de-democratised politics. And that's had... and that is not just a question, that does not just affect the narrow sphere of politics in Parliament. That has had ramifications throughout our lives, because our institutional professions, our institutional structures have been recast. You know, these are things through which most people live our lives. Mums, teachers, nurses, fishmongers, everybody lives their lives through these institutions, and they have been recast away from democratic principles into technocratic, rule-bound things that kind of squeeze the space for human judgment and human experience. And the effects of that, I think, as a teacher, I've seen how that's affected my profession, and I know people who work in the healthcare, and their profession is similarly affected, not just by material cutbacks, but by a profound demoralisation. And I think it's time to re-democratise and re-moralise politics. I don't think parties who are committed to technocratic forms of governments can do it. I don't think academics can do it, even if they're from Harvard or Cambridge, where I studied. I think it can only be done through the widest public engagement. The process has been started already, not by Nigel, powerful as he is and charismatic as he may be to some, but it's actually been done by everybody, and I mean everybody who voted in the referendum, whether it was Remain or Leave. Right? And so this isn't just about that anymore. It's about respecting that democratic vote. The Remainers might have been aligned with the political class this time, but if they let this democratic principle go, next time when you vote, who's to say the government will respect anything, right? So it can't be... It can't be done by them. It's got to be done, as the taxi drivers in Luton are discovering, as they're struggling to maintain their living standards. It can only be done by ourselves, not ourselves as frightened, isolated individuals, fearful for our reputations, but we've got to understand ourselves as citizens who are equal. We're able to argue, we're able to find points of consensus, as well as realise through arguing what is non-negotiable. And through that process, through that messy human political process, arrive at consensus decisions, which we did in that referendum. It's called independent thinking, it's called democracy, and I think it's worth fighting for.
Alka, thank you. Well, they're just 4 of the candidates that will be standing for us on the 23rd of May. I hope you agree with me. We've got some very, very capable and able people that are going to be running for this party. People actually of quality that our voters can go out and vote for. And I think they're all terrific. But there's one more I must introduce you to, our final speaker of the morning, who also is going to be standing in the European elections on our list and takes over from this moment as party chairman, which means I've got far less to do. So I'm delighted. Please welcome Richard Tice. It's all been fine. I didn't say anything. Just carry on.
Good morning. Thank you, Nigel. And thank you, firstly, to reiterate the thanks to the Penny family for hosting us here so warmly and generously. It is wonderful to be amongst a long-standing family business, the sort of business that actually is the bedrock of the UK economy and of which we should be incredibly proud. I've been a businessman and an entrepreneur for over 30 years. I've been involved in running small, medium and large companies, including a £1 billion multinational business listed on the stock market where we tripled the share price in just 4 years. I've built thousands of homes. I've been involved in creating tens and tens of thousands of jobs in the construction sector. And I've attracted hundreds and hundreds of millions of pounds of investment into this country from overseas. And I've been a lifelong member of the Conservative Party. But like many, I've concluded that, frankly, enough is enough. We cannot, we must not, and we will not allow this complete and utter shambles in Westminster to continue. We all know that the UK can do so much better than this. And that's why I've agreed to chair the new Brexit Party. And let's just take a step back and just pause for a moment amongst all the noise and the angst. Let's just remember, let's celebrate the fact that we are an incredibly proud, strong, confident, amazing country. Let's just celebrate that. Amongst all the noise in Westminster, we forget we're one of the top 6 economies in the world. We're a permanent member of the G7, a permanent member of the UN Security Council, part of the Five Eyes security network. We're the head of the amazing Commonwealth countries around the world. We have the best trained armed forces in the world, 3 of the top 10 universities. London is the greatest capital city in the world with one of the leading financial centres. These are huge achievements to celebrate. We also, of course, have the greatest football league in the world. And despite all the noise again, people forget. In 2018, thanks to Brexit, this great economy of ours outperformed Germany, France, Italy. We're employing record numbers of people. Unemployment is at record lows. And thanks to Brexit, wages are increasing faster than inflation. So we have so much to be optimistic about. And yet our current crop of politicians seem to be pessimistic. We are poised to go from strength to strength. But that, ladies and gentlemen, requires confident, bold, optimistic leadership. What we've had, and instead of that, we've seen an utter, total humiliation on the international stage. The absurd sight of our Prime Minister writing not 1, but 2 begging letters to overseas leaders in the space of a fortnight. You literally couldn't make it up if you were writing a fiction book. We have an incompetent government, incapable negotiating teams, and politicians who say and write one thing in a manifesto and then conspire amongst themselves to do dodgy, dirty, backroom deals in Westminster. Many politicians seem happy to sell our country, this great nation, down the river by tying us, strapping us into a straitjacket with this woeful withdrawal agreement. It is truly the worst deal in history, and yet they recommend that we sign it. And not only would this straitjacket have a padlock, but the key to that padlock would be given to bureaucrats in Brussels. You really couldn't make it up. And the other people that have been found out in this process are the civil service. They're not up to the job. And only this morning we learn that yesterday, politicians and the civil service seem to think that it's a good idea to stop no-deal preparations. You couldn't make it up, ladies and gentlemen. They should be ramping it up. They should be using this time to make sure that all the T's are crossed, all the I's are dotted, so that not only are we ready, but actually we're going to leave on a WTO Brexit, because that is the way that we maximise our negotiating leverage. That's the way to get the best deal for this country, not to stop no-deal preparations. As Ben said earlier, that is an appalling business negotiating tactic. And as we sit here or stand here today, it's unbelievable that in this country, the mother of all democracies, the very essence of trust in democracy, is being destroyed. And it's utterly tragic when thousands, hundreds of thousands of people who never voted before, they showed that confidence in the referendum, and now they're questioning, saying, why would we ever bother to vote again? Enough is enough. That's why, ladies and gentlemen, we must fight back. That's why, ladies and gentlemen, we must change politics for good in this country. Because we all know we all know that this country deserves so much better. That's why the Brexit Party is going to do things differently. We stand for competent, capable, common-sense politics. We know that Brexit creates a huge opportunity for optimism, for growth, for renewal in the United Kingdom. We've just got to grasp it. It's time we took on the vested interests. It's time we took on the establishment. It's time we took on the civil service. We need to change fundamentally the way this country is run so that it's run for the people. Never again, ladies and gentlemen, should we ever allow ourselves to be humiliated in this way. But if we carry on under this current leadership, we know what will happen. We'll be here on the 31st of October, Halloween night, and we'll be writing another begging letter. It must stop. So that's why we are so proud of the incredible quality of hundreds and hundreds of applicants to stand as candidates for this new party. And it's great to see the first 4 that we announced today. And as we announce the remaining candidates over the next couple of weeks, you will see specialist skills, real knowledge, great experience, success from entrepreneurs, from academics, from doctors, from people from the military. That's the sort of quality that we need to bring into politics to make this difference. And not only did hundreds and hundreds of people apply to be candidates, but it is deeply humbling that thousands and thousands and thousands of people across the country have online made donations to help start this new movement, this new party. That is deeply humbling for those of us that are leading it. And it's also extraordinary the number of activists and volunteers and local associations of other political parties who've been phoning up saying, can we help? Can we get involved? What do we need to do? We're with you. Just tell us when. Something is changing. There is a huge movement, ladies and gentlemen. This is a time to change politics for good in this country. And we say to anybody that says, well, these EU elections are not worth voting for, why should I bother? I'll tell you why you should bother. Everybody, for the first time, should vote in these elections, because this is an opportunity to send a very clear, very strong, very powerful message to Westminster. It's a chance for a springboard to transform politics. People want change. People want better people running our country, better leaders. People want quality people spending taxpayers' money, our money, wisely, better, and to stop the waste. People want faster decisions. In the world of business, we have a can-do, make things happen sort of approach. And that's what we need for the people running this country. If this country was run like a well-run, lean, successful business, we would all be in a much, much better place. So I say to you, never has the opportunity been greater. Never has the appetite for change been stronger. We can do this. We can restore trust in democracy, which is absolutely fundamental. We can send a very clear, positive message to Westminster. We can make Brexit an incredible success. We just need new, quality leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, let's believe in Britain. So, you're going to do the questions, yeah? So, that's enough from me. I may have gone on a little bit. We're passionate about this stuff. And I'm sure also that, no doubt, members of the press and anybody are passionate to ask some questions. So who would like to kick off? Hi.
I'd like to ask Nigel this question. Back in 2010, was a phrase, "We believe in Nick." The millennials paid for the mistrust in that individual. What I see here